Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm going to be doing an unhinged recap of The Will of the Many. So The Will of the Many was my favorite fiction book of last year. I adored it. It honestly reinvigorated my love for the fantasy genre, and since then I've had so many wins. We are coming up on the release of Book 2, The Strength of the Few, and the summaries online to me were not sufficient enough to actually remember everything that happened. I honestly forgot a lot of the book. So in order to love Book 2 as much as I love Book 1, I needed to reread it, and I did, and I realized that I could be the summary that I needed. The Wikipedia summary was not nearly long enough, and every other long-form summary is made by AI. So I'm gonna be your non-AI source of what happened in The Will of the Many. We're going to create a conspiracy board behind me for us to map out what actually happened. Two disclaimers before I start. Number one, this is designed for people who have read book 1. If you want to watch this alongside reading the book to make sure you don't miss anything, that's cool. I am going to try not to spoil things that have not happened yet within this summary. My second disclaimer is that James Islington does not use Latin pronunciations. It is mostly English pronunciations, but not entirely. I am an English speaker, but I did have 4 years of Latin, salvete omnes. So I am probably going to mispronounce things according to Latin or sometimes according to James Islington. It doesn't matter. It's not real Latin, so who cares? I'm going to start out with the world building stuff and then go straight into the summary. So the first thing that we need to know is that 300 years ago, the cataclysm happened. We don't know what happened in the cataclysm, but only 5 in 100 people survived, and they were mostly children. But we lost a lot of knowledge, specifically around the use of will. What is will? It is a manifestation of spirit, verve, energy, strength. It is the human spirit. It gives you your physical ability as well as your magical ability. This world has found a way to transfer will from people into objects or other people. If you give will to an object, it is imbuing. If you give will to another person, it is seeding and receiving. The more will you have, the stronger you are, the faster you are, the more magical ability you have, blah, blah, blah. When people use will, their eyes go black. Then we're going to go to the Catenan Republic. This is a nation that is inspired by ancient Rome. It is a republic that has spanned almost an entire continent. Here's a map. The capital is Catan. The region of Dedicia is where Catan is. Dedicia is what the nation of Catan used to be before they invaded everything else. Most of our book is going to take place on the island of Solavagus, which is near Catan. The most recent nation that Catan invaded was the island nation of Sus. The nation's symbol is a pyramid, and their slogan is stronger together. The most distinct feature of the Catenan Republic is the hierarchy. That is this. It is so prevalent in the Catenan Republic that it is often just called the hierarchy. People below in the hierarchy cede half of their will to a singular person above them. An Octavius cedes to a Septimus, who cedes to a Sextus, to a Quintus, to a Quartus, to a Tertius, to a Domitius, to a Princeps. Or Princeps, I'm not sure. Princeps is the Latin pronunciation. 8 Octavi will cede to 1 Septimus, 7 Septimi will cede to 1 Sextus, and so on and so forth. A perfect pyramid would be 46,000 people, but there are 24 million people in the hierarchy, so there are a bunch of pyramids. Most towns have like a sextus as their most important person, but every pyramid ends at a quartus unless they are the senatorial pyramids. So that's on our wall. The senatorial pyramids are the 3 branches of power of running the hierarchy. There is the military, there is religion, and there is governance. There is a total of 450-ish people in all of the Senate. Those higher up in a regular pyramid can apply to be part of one of the senatorial pyramids. A Quintus can apply to be a Magnus Septimus. People who are in the Senate have the title of Magnus. This idea of seating was not very popular among other nations. This is really a thing that the hierarchy has done. In theory, a Quintus who seeds should have the power of 56.5 people, and a Princeps should have the power of 430.25 people, while an Octavius has the power of half of a person. That's all of our background. Let's get into our summary. So, part 1 is called Imperium Sine Fine, which you might recognize if you studied Latin from the Aeneid. This is the phrase empire without end, which was used to describe the Roman Empire by its own propaganda. As a 14-year-old, our main character is hanging on the edge of a cliff. His father is above him, he's bloody, and he thinks that his father is going to save him and pick him up, but his father says, "Be strong and our main character falls. In the present day, 17-year-old Vis Solum is working in a prison. He is an orphan and has been assigned there by religion. In this prison, people are sent to these things called sappers that take away your will. And people usually go crazy from being around them. But Vis has been here for a very long time, and he's fine. He beats a coworker at Foundation, which is a chess-like game, saying that his father trained him on it. A well-dressed sextus comes in called Hospius. He has been assigned to come see someone who is in the very lowest depths of the prison, and Vis takes him there. He hears these people talking in a language that is dead, that Vis should not know. But he knows this because he was trained to be a diplomat for his sister. He tries to conceal that he can hear what they're saying. Hospius knows Natio is innocent and is asking why he is there. He believes that a man called Viridius is the reason he's there. They also say that a person called Siror mentioned things called Obitium, Lucaeum, and a gate before it happened. Natio begs Vis to let him go, and though Vis puts him back, Vis puts his hand on the sapper, and that's supposed to suck your will away, but nothing really happens to him, and he tries to disguise this. We find out that children are brought to this pre-cataclysm object called the Aurora Columnae when they're about 12 years old, so that they can seed from anywhere. Otherwise, you would need to have one of these huge pre-cataclysm objects to be able to seed. And we know that people who are at 18 years old, that is when you are mandated to go. Though most children go at 12. This goes to the city where he goes to a fighting ring pretty regularly. He is going to be fighting a sextus, which is a big deal. Usually only people below that are even at these fighting rings, and so he's like, oh my god, I am gonna get beat. This is a punishment because Vis has been too good at these fighting rings. He's winning too often. He ends up taking off his clothes so that the person won't imbue his clothes with will, and we see that there are scars all over his back. He ends up winning the fight, even surprising himself. There's also a young woman who keeps showing up to all of his fights, and she was there. We find out that Vis was a prince of Sus. He came from a very loving family. His father was King Cristoval, his mother is never named, he had an older sister Isabel who was supposed to be the heir, and a younger sister named Corinza or Kari. The woman who runs the fighting pits lies, saying that Vis was cheating by taking somebody else's will so that he can run away and not be killed by a mob. He goes back to the orphanage and finds out that there is a potential Quintus adopter coming, which is super rare. There's not even a Quintus in this area. The orphans consistently cede to the matron and people who come by saying that they're going to adopt. The adopter who came is Hospius. It turns out he is actually named Alkiskor Telemus, and he was sent to the prison by military. He clocked that Vis heard everything and that he was not affected by the sapper, and so came by. Alkiskor asks Vis to cede for just a minute, and he'll give it back, and he'll give him everything that he's ever wanted. Vis refuses. And Alkiskor figures out that this is because Vis has never gone to the Aurora Columnae, and thus cannot cede to him. We figure out that this is why Vis has the scars on his back, but we don't know what actually happened to get him the scars other than it has to do with the Aurora Columnae. They have a debate on whether seeding contributed to the cataclysm. Alkiskor adopts Vis. They're going to go to Alkiskor's country home, and they are going to do this by going in this white monolith that's floating in the sky. Vis has never even seen one. This is called a transvect. If you've seen the orange cover of The Will of the Many, that is on the cover, and it's important for later. It's a fantasy plane slash flying train slash blimp. Vis realizes that he is now Vis Telemus. Vis also finds out that Alkiskor is not just a Quintus, he is a Magnus Quintus. For military. He is part of the Senate and one of the most important men in the world. Alkiskor wants him to go to the Katenin Academy. This is where senatorial and other higher up children go for 18 months to train, and then they will be given jobs and rankings within the hierarchy. Children don't actually have titles yet. Using, seeding, and receiving will are actually forbidden there, so Vis is totally cool with going. He wants to not seed or receive forever, just like all of his people would have. And Alkiskor says that the only way that he would be able to choose where he gets put is if he were to rank #1 in the entire academy. Alkiskor says that military needs eyes and ears within the academy because it's run by religion and they're doing some shady stuff. They don't know exactly what's wrong, but Alkiskor suspects that the island itself, called Solavagus, which is Latin for wandering alone, and the pre-cataclysm ruins that are on the island. The principalis of the academy is Viridius Julii. I believe he's a Magnus Quintus. So this is one of the people that he had mentioned in the prison. Okiskor thinks that Natio was put there by him. Natio and Viridius went to the academy at the same time. Viridius placed first in the class and said that he was going to claim military at the end, until the very last second. There is this big competition that happens at the end that determines the rankings. After a student had died, he, at the end, changed to go to religion, and this is suspicious. Since then, strange disappearances and imprisonments of people in his class, like Natio, have happened a lot. The transvect that they're on is attacked, and Okiskor ends up taking the treetop height fall for him, covering him up, and he's fine for the most part. He's got a lot of will, he's beat up. Men come up saying that they were part of the maintenance, and Okiskor blows up one of their heads for lying to him. What? Then Okiskor is shot in the leg with an arrow, and he just falls down. He should not have been down like this. This arrow must be a really big deal. Vis runs away, gets into a fight, and gets a stab wound, and these men say that they are from the Anguis. They are a rebel group that existed before Seuss was taken, and they are rebelling against the hierarchy. Vis has seen how the Anguis actually rebel, and he does not agree with them. His father actually said it was like they were children throwing a tantrum. A woman appears among the Anguis. She calls herself Sedocia, making it clear that that is a nickname, and she is actually the woman who kept appearing at his fights, so she has been watching him for a long time. She calls Vis Diago, that is his real name, and says she is one of 3 people within the Anguis who know that that is who he is. She actually orchestrated Okiskor going to the prison and finding him. She wants him to join the Anguis because the hierarchy killed his whole family. And he is like, no thanks, I've seen how you deal with these things, it's not okay. And she says, okay, I'll let you think about it some more. There's going to be a feast for Yovan in a month, and I want to meet you in Katen there, and we can rediscuss. She pulls the arrows out of Okiskor's legs, he seems fine, and they go. Vis gets him and Okiskor back on the transvect, and he passes out. He actually wakes up in the infirmary at the Katenin Academy. There are 3 students there who are at the side of his bed trying to figure out what actually happened because they've heard the rumors about the transvect. These are Belly, Amisa, and Indal. And he promises that he won't tell anyone that they were there. He said that Okiskor saved him, but they said they were told by Belly that Vis actually saved Okiskor, which is the truth. Then a physician comes in and starts probing him physically and verbally. Vis has to determine what he's going to say carefully. So Vis has been on the run, basically homeless, lying about who he is for years. Vis is very good at crafting a lie when he is prepared. Vis, consistently throughout the book, is very bad at hiding his surprise. He has to come up with the story on the spot. This man keeps poking holes in his story. And luckily, Okiskor comes in and saves him and hugs this man, calling him Viridius. This is the man who is the principalist of the academy. He's not actually the physician. He is the man that Vis is going to be spying on. He's super freaked out that like, oh my god, I was already talking to the enemy and I had no idea. Okiskor treats Viridius like an old friend. Viridius asks if this is Okiskor's first time back and says there is a memorial. Vis tells Okiskor everything that happened except for that they called themselves the Anguis and about the woman that he talked to. Okiskor gives him a small tour of the academy. It's very opulent. Vis says it looks like they're compensating for something. And Okiskor has started picking up how many dead languages Vis knows and just like says a little bit of every once in a while. We find out that there's only one way onto or off of the island, and that is a transvect that comes exactly from one place. They go through a will cage to get out of the academy gates, and this is a room that is imbued with will so that no will imbued objects can get into or out of the academy. And this is relatively new. Okiskor finally tells him why he's wanting to get him into the academy. His younger brother, Siror, was in the same class as Viridius, and he died mysteriously at the academy. They are wanting Vis to investigate 2 sites of ruins on Sol of August. There's one that's right near the academy and one that's further away. Religion also seems to be studying the 2 sites of ruins. Okiskor doesn't have a lot of information for Vis. It's Vis's job to problem solve. Vis agrees, but he's really disturbed by Okiskor just murdering that man in cold blood. He says it goes against birthright, or the protection of every human life that the hierarchy espouses. We will talk about birthright later. They discuss the Katenin Arena, which is where the Festival of Yovan will be later, and Alkiskor says that he won't be staying with him the whole time, that a woman named Lannistia is going to be at his house to tutor him, and that she can be completely trusted. They arrive at Alkiskor's Sarkinian country estate, and there is a sunglasses-wearing young woman there who is not very pleased that Vis is there, being like, who the fuck is this kid? And this is Lannistia. Also, the sunglasses, there are dark glasses that will users wear a lot of the time, but we see Lannistia wearing them 100% of the time. Lannistia asks if Alkiskor has told Relokia that Vis is here. And Vis is like, who's Relokia? Relokia is Alkiskor's wife, and Alkiskor has not told Relokia that he adopted Vis. He has not told Vis that he's even married. We know Relokia is a Magnus Sextus and she works for the census, so she's not around a lot of the time. But we find out that because of birthright, which is mostly a series of laws and taxes wanting people to protect life, there are taxes on people who are not married by the age of 23, and later there are taxes on people who do not yet have children. So it actually isn't super surprising that Vis is getting adopted because it'll give them a tax break. They say that they were already planning on adopting someone to do this whole academy run. It was just a surprise that it was Vis and right then. Then we have Cadmus who shows up. He's the maintainer of the house. Trusted, but not as much as Lannistia. He takes Vis to his room. He says he's disabling the security on Vis's door, and Vis doesn't actually trust that's what he's doing. He thinks he's putting up some sort of lock. So Vis ends up sneaking out of the window and spying on Alkiskor and Lannistia, seeing what they're talking about. Alkiskor tells Lannistia everything about the Transvect attack, and Lannistia believes that this attack was orchestrated by Melior, who is the well-known head of the Anguis. Vis is found by Cadmus, who is very clearly bothered that this happened, and Vis suspects there was some sort of tracking on his person. Lannistia ends up giving him an hours-long test to try to figure out his education level. In the middle of the night, she tackles him and starts quizzing him on the material, and the most important question that she asks him is, what is the most important technological advancement of the 220s? And he says agricultural technology because it was able to boom the population. I would like to point out that the magic system is stealing power from others. So them trying to get a population boom is actually more power for the big guys. That also sounds like what Birthright is trying to do. He's super mad that she's done this, and he's like, if you don't think I'm in this, I want you to look at the scars on my back and that'll prove that I am actually in this. And she ends up removing her sunglasses. Her two eyes are burnt out. There are white sockets there. And she says that the Academy took this from her. Lannistia is using will to be able to see just like a normal person around her. She is pulsing out will about 200 times a second to be able to see around her. So she is incredibly powerful. She starts training him in fighting and she is kicking his butt. He's super mad about it, especially how she treats him very coldly. She says, fine, if you can even touch me in a fight, you'll win, and he can't. Lannistia brings him to the labyrinth, which is underneath the country estate. It is a replica of one of the major training facilities at the Academy. It's a test of how precise one's will use is and if you can multitask while doing it. 200 feet wide, 1,000 feet long. Above it is a 15-foot wide platform for people to look down on the labyrinth. She gives him this studded bracer with about 50 studs of onyx on it, and she twists one and a stone down in the labyrinth with the same marking on it moves. So the game that is played, there is a running team and a chasing team, and the runners have to try to get through the labyrinth while there are 3 different people who are trying to catch the runner, all while both teams are moving the labyrinth around. And Cadmus doesn't actually know about the labyrinth. This is a secret to everybody but Alkiskor, Vis, and Lannistia. They have actually stolen the plans from the Academy, and Vis is cheating by having extra turns on it, but it turns out that the 18-month Academy has already started. It is currently the break after the first trimester. First time Vis tries to move a stone, it breaks off and it cuts him very severely, but eventually he's able to move stuff even though it's poor. Lannistia is training him physically and with will. Cadmus is training him educationally. Cadmus is very knowledgeable and shows judgment toward Vis rather than the disdain that Lannistia has, and it turns out that he is from Sintris before his place was taken over by the hierarchy, and he was actually a professor at their most beloved academy. Vis is trained to learn about the different big plays players and their jobs. And this is going to be presented to the Senate for a vote on his adoption after the Festival of Yovan. So this is trying to figure out a way for him to stay in Catan for the festival before the adoption vote. And one day there's a visitor for him at the baths of the house. The hierarchy thinks people who don't have baths are uncivilized, so he's got some disdain for it. And it really says that this person's trying to make like an underground deal. And this man is Magnus Cordus Advenius Claudius, who is the father of a girl, Equa, who is going to be at the academy at the same time as Vis, who is actually already at the academy. Vis talks about how all hierarchy people feel the need to kind of disguise why they are actually doing the things that they do. They talk around the things that they actually want to talk about. Nobody's direct. This gives his normal fake backstory that he's from Acheria and makes up a couple of female tutors that he had. And Claudius says, oh, it's so weird that you had 2 female tutors. That would have been normal for the place where Vis is lying, saying he is, because the birthright is entirely part of the hierarchy. And Vis says, while the hierarchy does not outlaw women from working, the laws and taxes of birthright make it so that it is very hard for a woman to practically be out of the home. Claudius suggests that Equa and Vis train together. He says that Alkiskor has bias against the school, and then Equa would be able to help get Vis a leg up since he's already behind. Vis asks if Alkiskor has bias because of his brother. Claudius says yes, his brother's suicide. This is entirely new information to Vis that it was a suicide, and Claudius clocks that. Claudius says there's rumors about how the attack on the Transvect went down, so if Vis wants some maybe protection, if there is an investigation in the Transvect, then maybe he should do something for Claudius. So Vis agrees, despite knowing he would have to hide the secret of the labyrinth, because he puts in one thing that he wants. He'll say, let's have Equa and I get to know each other at the Festival of Yovan in Catan. Let's go to the festivities. And Claudius agrees. Lannistia says that Equa must be a spy, and Vis is like, of course. She says that Claudius has been trying to prove that Alkiskor is part of the Anguis for a long time, since he was up to possibly promoted to censor, which is a part of governance, when somebody in the Anguis revealed something about Claudius's sister. Lannistia asserts that Siror's death was not a suicide. She knew him, and she and Alkiskor believed that Viridius was the one who killed him. She knew Siror well, and talking about him makes her emotional for the first time that we've seen in this book. Now that Vis knows that it's super well known that Alkiskor does not like the academy, he's worried because this is so much more dangerous than he thought. He continues to train and improve on the labyrinth and other things. We finally meet Equa. The two of them are going to go to the festival together. She is not interested in what's going on, but she is not going to let Vis out of her sight. She is in class 4 at the academy and has moved up from class 6 in only the first trimester. We figure out that the academy is organized not based on age or anything. It's only an 18-month training thing. It is based on rank and ability. So of course, the people who are richer and higher up in the hierarchy are going to be higher up. We'll talk more about the structure of it later. Equa says that Catan must be the greatest city ever built, and Vis brings up any pre-Cataclysm cities when they had way more access to technology than they have. Equa looks at him like he's grown a second head, and he's like, oh, she's drank the Kool-Aid. That is total Catan propaganda. She is not to be trusted. Equa very abruptly brings up Siror's suicide and tells him the story as the public knows it. She says that it was during the Eutychium 6 years ago. That is the competition that is at the end of the academy to determine final ranks among the highest ranked students. Apparently, Siror had been acting erratically for weeks ahead of time. Viridius saw the whole thing happen. Siror believed that he had killed someone, but he hadn't. So he decided to step off a cliff rather than getting taken to one of the sappers. Viridius carried the person who survived back, and Viridius got an award for his heroism, meaning there was absolutely no investigation to Viridius being guilty at all. Alkiskor spent months trying to convince everyone Viridius is lying and had to be stopped by his family. Equa and Vis arrive at the Nomachia at the Catenan arena. The Nomachia is a mock naval battle. This is a real life thing that the Romans did. Even though there was a lot of death, it is the fucking coolest thing of engineering. They would flood a coliseum and put actual boats on there and have mock naval battles. It's awesome. Vis asks how it's possible that these people are going to be birthright protected. Like, do they have special armor, or what's going to stop them from being seriously injured or killed? And Ikwa's like, dude, of course some people are gonna die. It wouldn't be entertaining if it wasn't. These people are mostly criminals and prisoners. Like, they're not gonna be protected by birthright. And Vis, as we all should be, is disgusted and just reminds me of some country that I know. Vis says that he's going to the bathroom, but he's actually going to meet up with Sedocia. He does. She leads him through the sewers, and it brings him to this man who calls Vis Diago. This man is Esteban, who was one of his father's advisors. He also introduces himself as Melior, the leader of the Anguis. He wants to recruit Vis, and Vis tells a story about what he has seen the Anguis do. When he was wandering around for several years, he had come across a village of Octavie and Septimi, and they had taken him in, and he came back months later, and the Anguis had burned the entire town to the ground. Esteban ends up justifying this, saying that the Octavie and the Septimi are part of the problem because they're ceding their will to the powerful people. This, again, asserts he is not going to join. And Esteban says, that's fine, but we're not giving up on you. Sedocia leads him out. He notices that she looks ill and figures out that she's actually ceding to Esteban. And he's like, you're a major fucking hypocrite. And Sedocia says that she would rather use the enemy's tools than give in to the enemy. Sedocia draws his blood with a stylus. There's no weapons allowed in Catan, but you can have a stylus, which was just to write with. And she ends up stabbing him a little bit on the chest, and his blood gets soaked into the stylus, and she gives it to him to hide in his toga. He gets back, and the battle starts. Ikwa also seems to have a distaste for the Nomachia. Some shaking starts in the arena, and stones emerge from under the water, making a path. And Esteban, as Melior, runs out and begins a speech blaming the onlookers for the evils of the hierarchy. He says that he is setting the prisoners free and that they should join up with the Anguis when they can. Some people try to run at him to stop him, and they disintegrate like Thanos snap. One of the stands of people fully explodes, and these people are absolutely obliterated. Vis and Ikwa run toward the stand that has already been exploded to try to avoid whatever this weapon is that we can't see. It's just created by will. And Vis points out where the sewers are, that they should go out that way, and Ikwa is immediately suspicious. How the fuck could Vis know where the sewers are if he has never been here before? He leads her out and then is going to leave and remembers his father telling him the most important thing he can do is protect people, and he now has a weapon, so he is going to go back in. He enters the arena and approaches Esteban with the stylus. The stylus was warm and shaking when he was walking into the arena, and he's kind of like zenned out, sitting down, and Vis reaches up and touches him, and as soon as he does, he sees a flicker of an entire other world around him. It's described with purple and orange lightning-filled sky, a smooth black pyramid miles across, a harbor with a bridge lined with statues that must be 100 feet tall, with vast waves crashing against them. If you've seen the cover of The Strength of the Few, this may look familiar. This feels like he is burning, falling apart, going blind. Takes his arm off, he snaps out of it and presses the stylus to Esteban's neck and begs him to stop, that they're on the same side. Esteban says, we are what they make us, Diago. He says, we don't have to be. Esteban says, that's the power of the hierarchy, we do, because there is no standing apart. You fight the tyranny of the many, or you are one of them. Silence is a statement, Diago. Inaction picks a side, and when those lead to personal benefit, they are complicity. This feels power going into the air, that he's powering up his next attack. He pleads that even if your intentions are good, what do you deserve if you are killing people in this way? He says that he will help the Anguis if Esteban just stops. Esteban says that's not true, but that we will use you anyway. Esteban jerks the stylus into his own head, so it looks like this has killed him. The people in the stadium have seen this and cheer. This is, for a second, is relieved that this choice has been taken from him, and then puts the body and the stylus in the water so nobody can figure out exactly what happened. Vis passes out. This is the second time Vis has passed out in the book. I invite you to take a shot every time Vis passes out while reading the book. Maybe just take a sip if you're watching this. So Vis wakes up in the country estate, and Cadmus is no longer suspicious of Vis, and he's super happy he's alive. When Alkiscor comes by, he says that while they couldn't find any physical injuries, Vis was very touch and go. Cadmus had even suggested the use of a tyrium, which is the inverse of a sapper. Melior/Esteban is dead, and so are over a third of the 100,000 people that were in the arena. Turns out, on top of this attack, there were also smaller matching attacks that happened all over the Republic at the same time. Alkiscor, who wasn't even in the arena, he was just in Catan, literally fell to the ground when this attack happened, and he felt weaker. Vis has been out of it for a week, and that has been past the time when the vote was going to happen. They unanimously approved him to be adopted by Alkiscor since he saved everyone, and he has also been awarded the completely unique name of Catanicus. This is a title he has been given. It's not like a Purple Heart where it's an established thing. This is an entirely new name created for him because he stopped this major terrorist attack from being worse. Vis and Lannistia are super worried about him no longer being able to fly under the radar. Alkiscor is super pleased. Vis recalls the story to Alkiscor, and they both come to the conclusion that he must have been somehow immune to Esteban's attack because of him not going to the Aurora Columni, because the other people who were around him disintegrated, but Vis was just fine. Vis confronts Alkiscor about Seror's death. Alkiscor says Seror was very happy at the academy until he did not come home for a festival and the visiting rules ended up changing. This was before the cage was introduced. Alkiscor had given Seror this will-linked pen so that they could communicate with each other instantaneously. Seror decided to stay the winter on the island again to prepare, but also because there was a girl there he liked. And right before the Eutychium, the final, Seror begged Alkiscor to meet, which is a big deal because Seror would have been expelled from the academy if that happened. The Eutychium happened, Seror is dead, and Alkiscor finally looks closer at the strange letters that Seror had been sending him, and he noticed that there is a coded message within it that said, "Translation right, Obitium lost, Lucaeum unknown." Obitium and Lucaeum are the words that Vis heard Alkiscor and Natio saying at the prison. They're not words in a language that Vis knows, and Vis knows a lot of languages. He was supposed to be a diplomat. So let's put this up here, Obitium and Lucaeum. The rest of the message says, Skintris exinus worked. Gate still open. More strange pre-cataclysm power. Only Viridius knows. So let's put Skintris exinus on the board. Alkiscor says that the girl Seror was with was the one that Seror believed he had killed, and that girl was Lannistia. She lost her memory of months preceding the Eutychium. Lannistia remembers that the three of them were looking into the ruins, but the last thing she remembers, Seror and Viridius were like brothers to each other. The two of them can't figure out if Viridius killed Seror, why would he allow Lannistia to live? A physician comes supposedly from the Senate to run medical tests on him after the attack. He takes samples of his hair, skin, and blood. Vis gave as vague an account of the attack as he can, as he doesn't want the power that Esteban had to be in the hierarchy's hands. The man shows him 4 drawings and asks if he's seen any. One of them is clearly supposed to be the world that Vis saw when he touched Esteban. The other ones are a night sky with silhouettes of people hovering in front of a full moon, a desolate alien landscape with dunes covering a city's worth of broken buildings, and a massive hall with an enormous triangle at the end, symbol of the hierarchy, with writing in a language he doesn't recognize on the wall. The physician clocks Vis's recognition and leaves. Vis talks to Cadmus, who was apparently the one who took care of when he was asleep. Somebody says that Cadmus almost attacked anyone who even got close to Vis. Cadmus has a background in some medical knowledge and says there's absolutely no reason a physician should have taken his blood. Vis asks how Cadmus cannot harbor hate for Catan, and Cadmus shows him that he has the same scars on his back that Vis has from refusing the Aurora Columni. Cadmus says that he valued his life more than fighting back. They also looked into the students that he met at the academy. All of them are in class 3 and all of them are from military families. Vis is going to have to work his way up to class 3 to be able to even interact with them. Now we have come to part 2. It is called Deus Nolens Exitus, which directly means results God unwilling, but more in English means get results whether God likes it or not. In a flashback, young Vis is giving a speech. His father says that the man who is never nervous never grows. Vis arrives at Sol of August. Anything that's not on the Transvect that passes a barrier around the island is going to be sucked underwater. Vis is greeted by the actual physician of the school, and this man is very thankful because his sister was saved at the Naumachia, and he says, hey, I'll do anything for you, whatever you need. Vis meets up with Viridius, who says, hey, I know that Alkiscor thinks I murdered his brother. I'm not going to hold this against you, but if you step a foot out of line because Alkiscor is trying to get you against me, I'm going to punish you like I would punish any other student. Some people wanted Vis to start in a higher class at the academy. There are a ton of people in class 7. There are exactly 48 people in class 6, 24 in class 5, 12 in class 4, and 6 in class 3. Class 1 and class 2 don't actually exist. The people in class 3, the top 6 people in the academy, go into the Eutychium, and the first, second, and third place winners of the Eutychium become class 1 and 2. So anytime you move up a class, somebody actually has to be knocked back a class. Viridius takes him to the class 7 dorm, and there he meets Calidus, who is skipping a meal. Viridius brings the two of them to dinner, and there is this big kid from class 6 named Aiden who starts to step up to Calidus, wanting to beat him up. And Vis steps in and is like, hey dude, violence isn't the answer, this man just walked in here. Aiden ends up punching Vis, and Vis takes him down in a couple of shots. The class 3s that he has already met end up coming down and trying to break everything up. Praeceptor Nicias, who is the teacher for class 3 and second command to Viridius, even though the two of them do not like each other, he comes in and immediately starts blaming Vis. Vis goes to Talia's office. She is the praeceptor for class 5, and he tells her everything. And then Viridius and Nicias and a class 3 named Iro come in and give their version of the story, saying that Vis is terrible. Then Aiden comes in, and Vis has noticed that Aiden is clearly from another country and recently came here. He doesn't have that great of a grasp on the language, and Vis decides to give him this very formal threefold apology. It has been established earlier in the book that this is part of Katenin things, that if you do a threefold apology, you will be legally forgiven. So he apologizes 3 times, reaches out his hand, and Aiden accepts it, and everyone in the room is like, holy shit, this guy just did a terrible threefold apology, and this guy's just accepted it, and now we can't kick Vis out of the academy. He cannot be expelled for that. Everybody's mad except for Vis and Talia. When they leave, Talia tells Vis that every single student was saying the exact same thing Vis did until Iro started talking. Because of this whole debacle, he is going to have a punishment, and that is going to be that he is going to muck out the stables during dinner time every day until they say so. Even though this happened, Calidus was still beat up in the night. It turns out that the reason people don't like Calidus is because his father is the censor, meaning that he can veto people who try to apply and get accepted into the Senate. And he has been doing this a lot, like way more than other censors have. Not only that, but Calidus was originally placed in class 3 because his father bribed his way instead of whatever aptitude test that they have for the academy. This goes to class for the first time, and the questions are so easy. He can't believe nobody's answering, so he starts raising his hand and he's like just answering everything in as much depth as he possibly can. And Calidus is like, dude, what are you doing? If you keep doing this, they'll move you up a class. And Vis is like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And Calidus is like, are you sure? Later, Calidus also tells Vis that Calidus believes that Viridius actually set up the whole thing with Calidus being beat up. He knew that it was a tinderbox if he went to the meal, which is why he didn't go. And he thinks that Viridius set this up because Vis is the Catenicus and of course would stand up for the little guy. He thinks that Viridius was trying to get Vis expelled on his first day. Vis catches that Calidus is reading a really advanced book. He realizes that Calidus actually isn't supposed to be in class 7. He's doing this on purpose. why. Vis goes to the stables, and Amisa shows up, one of the class 3s. She says she also has penance. She says it's going to make it way harder for him to move up into class 6 and class 5 because they all hate him now. Vis also realized that by being assigned to stable duty during dinner, he is not going to be able to make friends with his peers outside of class. He asks if she has any tips for rising up the ranks, and she's like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Second time somebody said that. And she says that you need to do exactly what the teacher wants you to, because the only way that people move up is if that teacher specifically, you just have to kiss up to the teacher. She says that going up from class 6 is going to be super difficult because the preceptor Doltatus is an asshole, and him and Nikias are besties and agree on everything. The two of them hate anybody who is not originally from Catan. They start to leave, and she says she has to go study, and he's like, "Wait, you were doing penance. You shouldn't have to do whatever you were going to do." And she says, "Oh, they never actually gave me penance. I gave it to myself because I think I should have stepped in and helped you." And that's super sweet. Vis thinks that Amisa is super sweet and cute. The class 7 teacher comes up, and Vis thinks he's getting expelled. He's actually getting moved up to class 6. He moves into class 6, and his bunk is right next to Aiden. He's very terse, probably because he doesn't understand the language. The next day, Vis tries to sit again with Calidus at lunch, and Calidus is like, "It's gonna look really bad if you do this. Please go sit with your own class." And with much pushing, Vis does, and everybody there is like, "Dude, you have to sit somewhere else." Vis stands his ground, so everybody ups and leaves, except for Aiden. Vis starts his classes with class 6. The educational material is still too easy with him, but now a teacher hates him, so it's going to be really hard for him to get ahead. They are going to do the labyrinth at the school for the first time, and it's basically identical to the one at home. However, the ones with the bracers, unlike what Lannistia was trying to get him to do, which was running the labyrinth with the bracer, now we have somebody who is running and somebody with a bracer, two separate people. Apparently only the higher up classes do what Lannistia was training him to do, so he's got a little bit of a heads up. Down in 6, those with the bracers stay up on the platform while their teammates run. So the game works by having a team of 2, a runner and one with a bracer, and then the chasing team has one with a bracer, a spotter or 2, and then 3 people who are chasing the runner in the labyrinth. Viridius has shown up to watch them run the labyrinth, which is very, very rare. Vis is paired up with Aiden, and it's his turn to run. He gets really far, but Aiden didn't tell him basically any instructions, so he got caught easily. Vis compliments Aiden on his use of the bracer, and Aiden starts saying, "You were," and then says, "better than competent" in Chimeran. And it turns out Vis knows this language because his grandfather, his mom's father, that was his native language. So now they're going to switch with Vis on the bracer and Aiden running, and he keeps giving Aiden instructions, and it takes Aiden a long time to process it. So Vis starts yelling out instructions in Chimeran. Aiden gets it immediately. Not only does he get it immediately, they succeed on their first try. He makes it all the way through the labyrinth, which is absolutely unheard of. So Doltatus, the teacher of Class 6, says, "Congratulations, you did it, except it's not going to count. You're disqualified because you were speaking another language. That's not actually a skill, that's just something you already know," which is bullshit. Aiden calls it bullshit, and they don't do anything about it. And Viridius does not stop Doltatus. Viridius comes up to Vis and asks what he thinks of the other teams going. He says that they're bad, and Viridius is like, "They're not bad, they're average. You're just good." Vis says his teacher doesn't think he's good at anything, and Viridius says, "Yeah, that's actually because he has a grudge against you and me." So Doltatus and Nikias, so teachers for Class 6 and Class 3 who are besties, they both worked at the school when this all happened, and they were either up for promotion when it happened and then that didn't happen because the student died, or they were demoted. It's unclear. The two of them hate the Telemus name, and they also hate Viridius. This does note that while these people aren't really great with the bracer, that they do have good communication, and that the hunters have to mess up a lot for them not to get caught because the running team is basically just yelling directions out loud. Viridius mentions that an enterprising student might want to know that the labyrinth is open all the time, and people usually aren't there in the mornings. This says that Calidus is the closest he's had to a friend for a long time. Calidus tells him rumors about Aiden before he came. He's apparently from the south, further away from civilization. The rumor is that his whole family or tribe unknown, killed themselves when the Katenin showed up, that Aiden helped them kill themselves, and then he ended up killing 10 Praetorians, or soldiers, when his home was taken. But if that's true, why is Aiden not in a sapper right now? Calidus says Aiden should probably be higher than 6, and Vis is like, why? Calidus says that the school is meant to mimic the Empire, that hard work and dedication aren't actually the most major factors in how you move up the rank. Almost all the kids are kids of senators, so of course they're going to be better off because they've had training before they got here. He says that because people aren't perfect, the idea of meritocracy in the Republic is entirely false, because merit is determined by biased people, and that the Empire is founded on exploiting others rather than them being more suited for the job. Calidus is my boy. Calidus says that the people in Class 7 don't try because people who graduate from the academy, no matter what level they're at, will get a job of at least a sextus. It's dark enough that I think I have to turn my light on, so sorry about the lighting change. Calidus says that his father has census data that nobody else does, and that he has actually seen that there is discrepancies in what is advertised about the hierarchy versus how it actually is. He compares the number of people that there should be at every level of the hierarchy to what there actually is. There should be 360,000 sexti, but there are actually 60,000. There should be about 62,000 quinti, but there are actually 8,000. And there should be 12,000 quarti, but there are only 200 in the entire Republic. Even if you added all of the people, every single person in the Senate, to the number of quarti that there are, that's still 18 times fewer people than there should be. So what Calidus tells us is that the hierarchy doesn't look like this. It looks like this. And this is not even close to scale. Vis decides he is going to visit the ruins. He is going to visit the ones that are close to the academy. We're going to call them the green ruins. They are just outside the spiked walls of the academy. Vis takes an armored saddle to get over the spiked wall and walks into the forest to the green ruins. He's worried about the Alupai, who are these really intelligent wolves that are native to the island that he's been warned about. And he finds this domed building made entirely out of steel, which means it's pre-cataclysm. He's figured out that there's probably some sort of alarm triggered if he goes in there to Viridius, so he's got to make the most of his time. He goes down there and there's glowing green writing on the walls. He does not understand the language, and even some of the letters aren't even in an alphabet he recognizes. The words look engraved into the wall, but also hastily scrawled, which doesn't make any sense. The only thing that he can recognize is that he sees what looks like plans for the bracer. He finds a line in Old Vertusian that says something along the lines of, "In trying to become God, they created him." There's a ton of dark hallways where he can't explore them all, but he goes into this room that has hundreds of cavities in the wall, and in every single one of them is what looks to be a freshly dead body with an onyx sword stabbed into their chest, every single one of them. Also, they're all naked. They all look as freshly dead as possibly that day. He finds a bronze plate in the wall about the size of a person with different handwriting on it, and he touches it, and these green holographs appear on the floor. One of them appears to be Solovagus and its topography. One of them looks like Solovagus, but the topography is all wrong. And one of them is Solovagus with a giant fucking chunk left out of it. What? He starts hearing a voice speaking in Vertusian saying, which is a dead language if I have not established that already, "Obitium is lost. Do not open the gate. Synchronous is death. Obitium is lost. Do not open the gate. Synchronous is death." And I have put the word synchronism up on the board. More voices join this chorus, and he walks back into that room and sees that it is all the dead bodies saying that. And not only that, they all have their eyes burned out. What? What? He runs out of there, gets to the trees, and just as he does, he sees Viridius and this guy, Marcus, come up, and Viridius goes in there, doesn't find anyone, and he orders Marcus to go run to the academy and try to find what student is out of bed. But he has to go, order other people to do that as well. He has to rush back as fast as physically possible, and he completely tears up his hand trying to get over the spiked wall, does not have time to clean up the blood or anything. He successfully does get back to the room before Marcus can complete all of his things to get there. Aiden Aiden is the only one awake in the dorms. He looks at Vis, covered in blood, and says, "Strange dream," and turns back to his studying. Vis changes his clothes, gets back into bed, covers up his wound. Marcus comes in and is like, "Aiden, did you see anything?" And Aiden says no. In order to hide that he stabbed himself, he stages a cut with a knife at the dining hall. He goes to the real physician, and the physician's like, "Dude, I know that this wasn't an accident. There's no way you got that cut from doing that. I'm going to keep it a secret and keep stitching you up, but you need to keep your fucking head down because Viridius already came and asked if anybody had any strange injuries." Calidus and Vis are chatting at lunch, and some of the class 3s come down to chat. Amisa flirts with Vis a little, cute. Belly pretends to not be a part of the conversation. Calidus seems very nervous around Belly, and Vis thinks Calidus has a crush on her. He also notices that Belly has one of her fingers missing that was supposedly from a snake bite when she was 13. This doesn't become relevant later in the book, but I think it's going to be relevant in the series because why else would they say it? They seem to know Calidus well, which makes Vis think that Calidus was in class 3 for a while. When they leave, Vis finally asks how he fell from class 3. Calidus gives a ton of information on how the hierarchy is working right now. The 3 pyramids of the Empire are currently at odds way more than they normally are. Basically, the only way that they get wealth is by invading other countries, and it is becoming harder and harder to do that as they have gotten bigger. Calidus and possibly his father are anticipating that there is going to be a civil war within the year between the different senatorial pyramids. It turns out that the reason that many people don't want to be higher in the academy is because those in classes 3 and 4 are required to do 10 years of mandatory military service. And with the potential bloody, will-fueled civil war coming, that sounds awful. Vis and Aiden talk when they're going to go to the labyrinth. Aiden's like, "Dude, did you kill someone?" in Chimeran. And Vis is like, "No, it was my blood." And he actually tells Aiden a lot of what was going on. He says he was going into the ruins. Aiden is all for the fact that he's going against what the Academy wants, but Vis says that he's doing this on the behalf of military, and Aiden does not like that. Aiden appreciates that someone speaks his language. Vis kind of asks, "Oh, do your family not speak the language anymore?" And Aiden's reaction means that something terrible has happened to his family, which is fucking dumb for Vis to say because he kind of already knows that. So all of this is Chimeran, and the class 6 teacher does not like that this is happening. So the two of them start making fun of him in Chimeran, translating it to be something innocuous, and the two of them basically have become friends at this point. It is finally the Festival of the Ancestors, which means that everybody's gonna go home and like visit the graves of their family members. And Calidus has been told to stay behind to focus on his study. He's disappointed, but he's hoping that his father understands that he is in class 7 and that he's just playing along. Viridius asks after Vis's hand, but doesn't seem to be suspicious about it. He says that Vis is done with the stables. Viridius says that he doesn't accuse Alkiscor of lying about Viridius and Seror. He just thinks that Alkiscor believes what he needs to believe. Calidus doesn't believe that Viridius would be the type to kill someone. Vis leaves on the transfect, and Iqua sits right next to him, and then Amisa and Indal join. Iroh sits by himself. Turns out that Iroh doesn't like Vis because Iroh's sister died at the Naumachia. Vis thinks that Iqua seems to be sitting with the group of them to listen, not to participate. They go to the Agaris, which is this giant graveyard of thousands of tombstones, and people are visiting them, and there are these 3 eternal fires, which are these pillars of fire hundreds of feet tall. Usually after the rites are said, Ketenan bodies are taken there to be burned. Past them is the Necropolis, which are these steep mountains that are covered in the crypts of the first families, which are the families that have existed since the Cataclysm. So Vis is swarmed at the platform because this is the first time he's even been seen in public since he just saved 60,000 people. Vis joins Alkiscor and they go to the Telemus crypt that is built into the mountain. The place is disgustingly opulent. He says the name Telemus is made in gold that could have fed a family of Octavi for a year. Not only that, there is a willpower device called a Viterium. Usually it is used for healing someone or keeping food fresh, but it is storing the body of Alkiskor's uncle to be perfectly preserved. And this is an absolutely disgusting use of living people's life force. Each of these devices are given to the first families. Lanastia shows up, and Vis tells the two of them everything he can remember, but they are not satisfied with this at all. The only thing that he doesn't say is the message that the dead bodies were saying at the Green Ruins, because he wants to be believed. Lanastia asks if the eyes look like hers, and they do. Alkiskor says that he is disappointed that Vis is still in class 6, and Vis asks him to pull strings to get him into class 5. Get some student kicked out of class 5 for some reason. Vis asks Alkiskor if he can make him a will-imbued grapple. He wants it to be strong enough so that it won't fall apart, but he wants a manual release that he can trigger easily, because Vis wants to visit the other ruins. When Alkiskor's not there, Lanastia says that she is really startled to know that she might actually find out more information about what happened to her. She doesn't know how to feel about it. And she also says that if Vis had not gone to the ruins, Alkiskor might have just pulled him out of the school. Vis is on thin fucking ice. So then Alkiskor's family shows up, as does Relokia, who it turns out is Sedocia. What? Vis reminisces on the fate of his own family. He has heard rumors that his father, mother, and older sister were hung in the streets of Seuss, but not anything more than that about them. They all reminisce about Siror, who was a fairly unserious person, but who was super dedicated, and they believed that he could be the first princeps of the family. Relokia takes him aside, and Vis thinks she's gonna kill him. She says she's not. He realizes that if she doesn't want to kill him, the whole thing of him killing Melior must have been her plan all along, that they had bet on Vis going and trying to stop everything. She says whether he likes it or not, the Anguis are going to utilize him. The Anguis actually want him to succeed at the academy, and she doesn't seem to have any problem with him wanting to go to this outpost. Have I mentioned the outpost? Vis really wants a job in the middle of nowhere at the far edges of the hierarchy, so he doesn't actually have to be part of the hierarchy. Relokia asks if they've taken any blood, saying that all of the students eventually get their blood sampled. She won't tell him what the weapon that Melior had was. She has been watching this ever since he had been succeeding in the fighting pits. It turns out that Melior had found him looking for his younger sister, Corinza, and Vis says that Corinza died in the escape that the two of them made. She confirms that there are no Anguis at the academy, which is great, and that she requests that he goes to Katen for the festival of Platuna, and he asks if the hierarchy does collapse, are the Anguis going to get rid of the Aurora Columni? And she's like, well, nobody really knows where they are except for the princeps. Nobody really knows how you would destroy them, so they don't really know how to do that. So she's like, shrug. But she just generally seems really nonchalant about wanting these really powerful things to stay around. And so Vis realizes that if the Anguis were able to take over, it would be Animal Farm. Like, it would literally just be a new terrible regime taking over. Vis admits to her that he did not kill Esteban himself. Alkiskor's parents are furious that he is still on about Siror's death. It is a huge mark of shame for a family to have to deal with suicide, and they believe it was a suicide. Alkiskor disappears for an hour and comes back with the things that Vis wanted, a set of clothes and these 2 cuffs, and he says, oh, Vis has to leave early, he has to study, when he's actually going to be going to the Red Ruins. And Alkiskor, while they're walking away, asks where Vis is really from. Vis gives in that his backstory is a lie, but he does not go any further. Vis gets on the empty transvect. He shoves the new clothes and one of the cuffs into like the seats and goes underneath. If you look at the picture of the transvect, there's like this platform underneath the transvect. He goes under there, links up the cuff that he has, so he is attached to the bottom of the transvect. And he is going to hold on this way so that he can get to the other side of the island as the transvect goes around Solavagus. If he jumps off too quickly before the barrier, he's going to get sucked underwater. If he goes too late after the barrier, the transvect will be moving too fast and he could get killed by hitting the water. He ends up using the mechanism on the cuff so that he falls off into the water and he successfully lands just past the barrier. And he uses a will-powered like compass-y device to try to mark out where he left off from this anchoring point on the wall. He gets to the other set of ruins and he finds a red domed building that is put into the mountain. There are no balconies, no windows, no doors, and he can't figure out how to get in. On the front of the building, he finds a pyramid symbol of the hierarchy with words in Vertusian that say, Lucam obitium res. We've not seen the word res before. He also sees the phrase remember, but do not mourn. He thinks that the pyramid is the right size to be a door, but he can't find the way in. So he just starts remembering all of the things that were in that message from Siror, and he just repeats the phrase because it said Skintris Axinus worked. He says it out loud to himself, Skintris Axinus, and a door opened. He thinks that's really weird. He doesn't know any type of will-made thing that would open from a voice command. I just want to point out, if you turn this into Latin, Skin tres ex unus, you split that into 4 words. This is 3 from 1, and skein is the same, like, verbal form of the word for scissors, so it means tear 3 from 1. It'll be important later. Also, if you want to do the Latin here, obitium is not real Latin, but it invokes like death words, like obituary. Luceum is a form of the word lux, or light, and res is the Latin word for object or thing. He goes into the red building. It seems abandoned. He finds a ton of dead bodies that are just like the ones in the green ruins, and he finds a hall that ends abruptly into just this black chasm. The platform moves, he drops his torch, and suddenly he starts moving with the torch as the platform starts following. He's lowered down into this cavernous room. There's a hierarchy symbol carved into the opposite wall, and a man jump scares him from behind. He has burnt out eyes. He says his name, and then, I was a traitor to the commandment of isolation. I attempted to gain synchronism and remove the seal to obitium during the rebellion of the 7th era after the rending. What is the rending? I have been lawfully condemned to servitude, guiding those who came after. He only responds to very specific questions. It's kind of like he's programmed to only say certain things. And he says that this is a basic proficiency test, that the test is to reach the entrance, pointing to the symbol across the hall, but like there's nothing in the way of him just getting there. And Viz is confused until the man hands him a bracer, which is much lighter than the one that they have at the academy. And then these stones appear from the floor, and he can tell that it is a labyrinth. There is a labyrinth inside the pre-cataclysm red ruins. What is up? The man says that if he passes the test, this will go through the gates to obitium and luceum, but he won't be able to return. That synchronism is only allowed for leadership. This realizes that these 2 words are places, and we notice that res is not an option. So that means res must be here, which makes sense. It's a plain Latin word. The man says that if he tries it, remnants will chase him. Vis doesn't know what they are, and the man's like, oh, do you want us to run a practice? And Vis is like, sure. The man steps through what seems to be like a clear barrier, almost like a bubble, through to get into where the labyrinth is, and he's walking with the bracer, and these things that are made of, like, they're like a tornado of black glass start from the opposite end and start coming through him. He is just walking, not even running, not moving anything, and he gets fucking blenderized by these things. And Vis throws up. It's disgusting. A woman jump scares him from behind, says the almost exact same thing as the man, except that she says she's from the 11th era after the rending. He goes back the way he came, out outside the red ruins. He's cutting it close to be able to make the very last transvect, because he is going to shoot himself up in the water to get onto the transvect. So he's about to miss the very last one, but he needs a break, and he stops by a river, catches himself a fish, and he sees there's a baby alupai who's been injured, and he like saves him from wherever he's caught, and the baby is kind of like iffy on whether he likes him, but Vis gives him fish, and the baby runs away, and it got a mark on its face. And Vis wonders if he should call the alupai Thiago. The will-powered compass, as soon as he had got onto land, had stopped working, but now that he is into the water again, the compass starts working again. Why didn't it work? He ends up swimming as fast as he can. He ends up dropping the cuff. He knows if he can't get the cuff, he's dead anyway, so he swims under knowing that he can't go fast enough. And it turns out it had been caught on a wall underneath the water. And he grabs it, realizing that he was literally inches away from being sucked under the water and dying. He gets the cuff, boom, and gets pulled up under the water just as the transvect goes. And he carries himself by his wrist. His shoulder is fucked up. He ends up swinging himself onto the service platform and gets back into the transvect somehow, and Talia, who's in charge of Class 5 and was the HR lady from earlier, she meets him on the platform looking for a 4th year who has not showed up. And the next day, Half of class 4 are missing. This is like, who died? And it turns out it's that missing class 4. He apparently committed suicide. That's sus. A girl from class 5 is now going to be moving up to class 4, and it should be a shoo-in for Vis to move up from class 6 to class 5. I did mentioned earlier that because he covered for Vis owes him, and he wants him to tutor him in common. And Aiden asked, because of the injuries, is Vis no longer going to tutor him? And Vis knows that this is actually him asking if now he's going to be promoted, if he's actually thinks he's too good to tutor Aiden. Vis is of course going to keep his promise. Talia, the class 5 lady, comes into the class 6 for Daltatus and is like, you need to let Vis move up. Daltatus doesn't want to, and the lady says, name any student in this class who can do any skill better than Vis can. And Daltatus picks out this boy named Yonix and says sword fighting. Vis is like, oh, that's fine, I can do sword fighting. And then it turns out that this kid is like the national champion, and Amisa and Aiden decide that they're going to train him over the night. The way that they duel in Catan is that they have a set of magical armor that is paired to an empty set of armor. You end up fighting the armor that is matched to your opponent. So you are fighting a dummy that moves, and they are fighting a dummy that moves. If you hit any of the special points in between the armor, that like deadens it for the other person. So if like you hit here, they would no longer be able to use this arm. And if you hit their head, they're gonna be entirely incapacitated. So they train him overnight. He's good on sword fighting, but he just needs to train with these pieces of armor. Aiden in Chimerian mentions that Vis and Amisa like each other, and Vis kind of responds, but privately he is thinking that there's no way he thinks he can pursue a relationship because he's lying about who he is. Amisa mentions that Iqua has been asking after Vis and acting strange after she got back from the necropolis at the festival. Amisa says goodnight to them in Chimerian. So fuck, she heard the whole thing about him having a crush on her. Calidus accuses Vis of lying about his middle-class Akirian background since he's so fucking good at everything. He is pissed. Yonix, the boy he's gonna be sword fighting, asks Vis to back down, and Vis will not. The whole school shows up to the fight except for Calidus. The fight begins, and he is barely able to keep up with Yonix, especially because he's trying to downplay his actual ability. It turns out that Yonix actually has a lot of tells on his face, and he has been able to get away with that because you're supposed to be fighting the double of the body. So Vis starts paying attention to Yonix's face while he is fighting the double. Vis ends up hitting a part of the armor, but Yonix is not incapacitated. And Vis is like, time out, there's something going wrong with the armor. They check it, and it looks to be fine. Okay, whatever, let's just keep going. He does it again, and it is a definite hit, and nothing happens to Yonix. Calidus shows up halfway through the fight and gives Vis the nods he needs to really go for it. So he's like, okay, people are cheating. I need to do this definitively. He ends up throwing his sword away, tackling the thing, and beating the head into the ground. Nothing happens to Yonix's armor other than him just getting beat up. He lifts the head off of the armor, touches both his sword and Yonix's sword to it, and nothing happens. It should have disabled the entire set of armor. So he has just proved that they were cheating. So Vis says to the class 5 teacher, I'll see you in class. Calidus is still mad. Vis lets on that his census data is actually forged. So if Calidus told other people who Vis really is, that Vis could be severely in trouble, sent to a sapper, killed, whatever. And Calidus and Vis are still friends, so he doesn't want to do that. And he accepts that answer for now. Calidus is acting off. He says that being in class 3 or 4 is dangerous. That the last 4 graduating classes have had at least 2 deaths in those classes at the Eutychium. The people who seem to be attached to those deaths got high up positions in religion, and everybody else had to take a silentium vow, and breaking one of those would send you to the sapper. Apparently a silentium vow is also part of the academy paperwork. 10 people from the last 4 class 3s have disappeared with no warning and no investigation. Calidus has this information from his dad because his dad leaked it to him. Calidus and him continue to spar and study. Aiden is taking to learning common very well, and Vis wonders if the academy is actually priming students to run the labyrinth in the Red Ruins. And he wonders if that's where the missing students have gone. He works very hard, and Vis is pushed up to class 4. He is now in class with Iqua. Skius, who is the class 4 preceptor, says that if Vis wants to succeed in class 4, he needs to actually connect with the people in the class, because the people who are in class 3 and 4 automatically get sent into the Senate, which is another reason why somebody might not want to be in class 3 or 4. Skeetus is like, you need to have people skills, please study with the class 4s, but Vis says he is going to have to keep his promise to tutor Iden, and that keeping his promise should be more important to him. Vis does notice that there are divides in the students based on what pyramid their parents are from. Iden did not like that Vis has started to sit with the class 4s, and he says that this is how the hierarchy gets you. They make you bend on every tiny little thing until you fit their mold. Iden said that it was Viridius's idea for Iden to attack Calidus, that Viridius would give Iden something he had been trying to get before he got to the academy. Iden says that he was in a sapper for almost a year before he arrived at the academy, because he had killed not 10 Praetorians, but 3. A child killed multiple hierarchy soldiers. Iqua is at the top of class 4, but she is the least like, and other than jealousy, Vis can't figure out why. It is time for the two of them to run the labyrinth, and he's on the bracer. The class 3s are actually coming to visit, and Iroh shows up and starts just yelling things at Vis while he's doing the run, and Vis messes up. Iroh does the same thing when it's Iqua's turn with the bracer, but Iqua is able to keep it up. And Vis is like, okay, I've still got room that I need to get better. Indal invites Vis to join the other thirds who are from military families over semester break. They are going to be going to Indal's new family estate on Seuss. Yep. His new family estate is Vis's childhood home, the palace. He recalls the very last time that he saw his father, bloodied as Vis falls, and his little sister was swept out to sea. He's never heard if anybody has found his little sister's body. Vis starts to leave for the festival. He's supposed to meet Reliquia there. He needs to slip away from the others. Iqua pesters him if he saw the dead student the night that it happened, and he keeps saying no. She says that she visited Alkiscor, and that Alkiscor said that Vis was wandering around the valley when she had come by, and that, like, the student would have been there at that time. So now we know that Iqua thinks that Vis killed this student to get his position, when really Vis didn't do it. It was probably Alkiscor. He goes to the festival with the class 4s. The girls go to Foundation Tables, which is the chess-like game, and he sees Iqua flip a coin to start a game when he knows that she has in the past been able to flip heads 15 times in a row, so she just knows how to flip a coin correctly. And he ends up slipping away from the boys to meet up with Reliquia in this abandoned house. She says that she orchestrated him going to Seuss with the military kids, and he's like, why would you do that? That is the only place where I'm going to get recognized. And she's like, not only are the military kids going to meet up there, there is going to be a meeting of the military at this house while you are on semester break. She needs him to be there because on the very last day of the military summit, the people who are super high up, I don't know if it's the Tertius is above or the Quartus is above, they are going to be meeting. Alkiscor is going to be there, but he's not going to be at that meeting. You have special knowledge of the house, so you need to go there. He doesn't want to, and he's like, well, you can't kill me, I'm too important. How are you gonna force me to do this? And she's like, I'll kill your fucking friends. Reliquia leaves, and Vis decides to spy on her. She meets up with a man, and they say, think they will accept? They have to. A ship is a small price to pay for a cataclysm weapon. They say they were able to use it as an anchoring point, which we have only ever heard about that wall. The man says they will need to keep some people from coming back. Vis sees 3 items on the table, and they appear to be 3 decapitated heads. The man causes some sort of thrum with Will, and then a man approaches from outside the house and walks in the door, and it is the same man. So this man has just teleported with Will. We don't know how he did that. Vis goes to meet up with the class 4s again, and Vis notices that there are 2 men following him, and he thinks they're Anguis. He runs, they catch him, their eyes flood with black, so they're using Will, and they start beating him up like they are gonna kill him. And right at the end, they look at his eyes and they say, nothing. And 2 people approach, and a voice he recognizes says, then let him go. It is Skeetus and Equa. Equa had believed that Vis had been cheating at all the ways that he had, increased in the academy. She was checking if he would use Will in a life or death situation when he is not allowed to while being a student in the academy, and he didn't. So Vis has proved himself. But Skeetus, who is the class 4 teacher, makes it very clear that Equa is going to be punished for testing Vis in this way. But he also didn't have a problem with doing the test in the first place, so he's not that great. When he gets back to the academy, Vis finds Calidus and Belly walking outside and talking, and Calidus seems frustrated with Belly. So Vis wonders if they have a secret relationship and they're having trouble. And trimester break has come. It is time to go to Seuss. And that is the end of Act 2. Act 3 is called In Cauda Venenum, which means poison in the tail, referring to a scorpion. This reminisces on his time after Seuss fell. He says that he dreamed of Seuss for months, that he would constantly stay on the coast, that it reminded him of home, but eventually it was too much to bear, and he has stayed away from the coast ever since. And he is so homesick and is trying to disguise it as like seasickness as they're on the way to Seuss. Indal is the number 1 in the class, and he is favored to win the Eutychium. Vis says that he is the closest thing that the hierarchy has to a prince. His father is actually one of the Dimity of military. Belly is occasionally condescending. She is kind of advertising herself as the smartest of the group. And also, she is the best at running the labyrinth of the group. Indal says that before his family came to the island, that the people were barbaric and that they didn't use will for anything. People are so nonchalant about its takeover as if it was painless and bloodless. His family's palace has been totally desecrated. There were carvings of the Seuss people on the outside that have been changed to be Katenin. Luckily, the inside seems unchanged. They didn't tear down the palace and bring it back up. The Magnus Domitius, who is Indal's father, welcomes them. One of the people in Domitius Keyskill's retinue is one of Vis's former tutors. His name was Federique. That man is now a sextus, and Vis realizes that he must have defected to the hierarchy pretty soon on. They get to pick their own rooms. Vis beelines for a very specific room. This was not his room when he was a child, but it is an important one. He closes the door behind him, finally cries, and then he tests the fireplace in the room. There is a hidden tunnel system within. Alkiscor and Lannistia show up, and they give him a gift from Reliquia, which is a stylus that's gold and says Stronger Together on it, which is a reminder for him to keep up his fucking end of the bargain, and the two of them do not know about that. At dinner, seating is arranged by rank, but Vis is invited alone to sit up with Domitius, and he is grilling him on what happened in the Nomachius, obviously trying to figure out what was the weapon that Esteban had. Misa comes and saves him from this grilling. They talk for a while, and then Alkiscor grabs him from Amisa and is like, hey dude, I see that you two are friendly. She is not to be trusted. Do not do this. And Vis is like, I won't, but he's clearly falling in love with her. The 4 kids are on the beach, and Vis is disturbed because it's the same beach that he tried to revive his drowned sister on before letting her body go out into the ocean. He mentions Calidus to Belly, and she has immediate distaste, so he's like, okay, they're not dating, what's up? Amisa invites Vis to go swimming with her later tonight. He's like, I don't think I actually have time, but thank you. Federique comes up and he brings the group of them to a native Seussian restaurant, and the guy immediately is like, fuck no, I'm not serving you guys, get out of my restaurant. And everybody's super mad, but Vis is super proud that there is actually some sort of resistance force happening against the hierarchy. Vis has decided that he needs to pretend to be sick in order for him to be able to sneak on that meeting, so he needs to set it up ahead of time. Indal says that Amisa is swimming in the lagoon at that moment. Why isn't he joining her? And Vis is like, the lagoon? What do you mean? And he starts running because apparently there are really terrible riptides that even the strongest swimmer could be caught by that are at that location during the night. So Vis has given information to Indal that he knows more about this area than he's letting on because he's run. He runs, he jumps off this cliff to save her. He ends up taking them to this cave that is nearby because they can't go ashore because the riptide is there. Which also, if Amisa was, conscious enough to pay attention, might realize that that is also suspicious. So he has just led on to 2 people that he knows more than he's letting on. Amisa cries because she nearly died. She ends up kissing him, and she also tells him that Indal told her that he is going to defect to religion. Him and his father actually don't get along. This is simply not done if your family is that far up in the hierarchy. This would be a huge deal. So the two of them start going back, and Vis starts sowing the seeds of him having gotten a cold from this incident. When they get back, Alkiskor and Lannistia show up to finally get the debriefing, and Alkiskor is furious in a way that Vis has never seen before. Vis says that he has fulfilled his end of the bargain because he visited both the Green and Red Ruins, but Alkiskor is like, that is not enough. You need to find out exactly how my brother died. And Vis is like, that is absolutely unreasonable. There's no way I can run the labyrinth. Like, it is going to kill me. And he's like so shocked that Alkiskor has no regard for his life. Vis realizes that Alkiskor is so mad because Alkiskor believes he has lost power over Vis. Vis begs Lannistia to stand up for him, and she actually does. Alkiskor backs off a little bit, and he's like, you still need to get better at the labyrinth. We need more information. For the first time, Vis is actually seeing how deep Alkiskor's obsession is going. This is not about military. This is personal. Vis does eavesdrop on that military meeting. They have a list of senators who have already betrayed military or who they believe are going to betray military, and they start listing out all their secrets, affairs that they've had, and they even specifically mention some gay affairs, and Vis mentions that that is forbidden by the hierarchy because of birthright. So we have finally gotten all the information about birthright that we get in this book. So they say it is protecting life. It is actually about having the lower classes procreate as much as physically possible and taking as much will from people as possible. So they don't want people to be gay because they won't create children. They want women to stay in the house so they can have as many children as possible. They don't actually care about killing people, and they're sapping away the will of prisoners because they aren't protected by birthright. This is all in order to funnel as much power to the top as physically possible. It's gross. And it also sounds fucking familiar. Never ever let them tell you that fantasy is not political. Anyway, they also talk about the Anguis and the attack on the Naumachia. It turns out that the military actually funded the Anguis' attack on the Naumachia, killing hundreds of people in their own pyramid, which makes them not look suspicious because their own people died. They believe that Melior's death ended the weapon. Whatever weapon died with Melior. It turns out that the Anguis do not know that they are being truthfully funded by military. They believe that they are getting funded from Anguis spies within military. They are trying to get more power for themselves because if the people are afraid of terrorist attacks, the other pyramids are going to have to let military do more things to try to protect them. The Anguis are not allowing the military to use the necropolis somehow, and they are also going to do another attack. It involves a ship going missing, which matches up with what he overheard Relukia saying, which means that must be why he was sent to this meeting. He has written all of this down on a tablet he's going to erase later. He leaves, and Federique actually meets him in the tunnels. Federique kisses him on the cheeks and bows and is like, oh my goodness, my prince, you're back. He had actually recognized Vis immediately, but he wasn't totally sure it was him until Vis had picked that exact room, because Federique was the only person outside of the royal family who knew about the tunnels. Nobody knows that Vis is in the tunnel and that Federique is actually good. Vis gets mad at Federique and is like, how could you defect? And Federique is like, I am doing exactly what your dad told me to do, that I needed to help facilitate what was happening on Seuss to try to keep power out of the hands of the hierarchy. And Vis kind of backs off and realizes he was just being angry. This guy was doing the best he could. He asks after his family what happened at their actual deaths, and Federique says his older sister and his parents were indeed hung, but it was a private hanging that he himself was one of the witnesses of. The entire nation of Seuss was told that the king had told them to stand down against the hierarchy, and they did not find out until days later the royal family had been killed. And then they rebelled. They were put down because of that and turned into Octavie. Vis asks after Kari, and Federique said that her body washed up later. She is indeed dead. We knew they were dead ahead of time, but like we've gotten confirmation from a trusted source that they are actually dead. Family's dead. He opens up to Federique about what he's doing there. Federique thinks it's sus that people knew that the tunnels existed. Esteban would not have had access to the tunnels. So how did Relukia know that Vis would be able to eavesdrop on the meeting? Federique shows Vis a room full of stuff that was his parents, including these little carved ships that Vis made when he was a child. There are 2 bigger ones, and you open them and it has his parents' name inside, and there are 2 little ones that have his sister's name inside, and the one that has Vis's name inside is missing, and Vis says this is very apt. The 2 of them end up talking until the morning, reminiscing on old times and everything, and they realize that they are never going to be able to talk freely again, and they say goodbye. Vis recalls his father asking him why he believed his family had the right to rule. His father said there is no such thing as a good ruler, and that systems of people are fraught with problems because they're made out of people, but that some systems are founded upon corrupt policies, the hierarchies being greed. Vis copies his notes from the meeting to Relokia. It is the same sort of paired stylus that Alquiscor and Siror used, and now he can erase it, and there is no proof that he was ever in there. Indal comes up to Vis and accuses him of being a son or bastard of an advisor of Seuss, because clearly Vis knows more about this area than he's letting on, and Vis is like, oh, you got me, yeah, that's totally me. And Indal is going to tell everyone about this, but then Vis alludes to the fact that he knows Indal is going to defect. He doesn't actually say that's what it is. He just says like, hey, I know something else about you. So Indal keeps his fucking mouth shut. While Belly purports herself to be the smartest of class 3, it is actually Indal. Amisa and Vis are becoming more public with their affection for each other, and they are kind of officially dating at this point. He studies with the thirds, and he's finally moving on to things he doesn't already know. And on the very last day of the trimester break, he ends up going to that restaurant that they went to before, and without saying anything, the tavern owner appears and gives him a plate of food that was traditionally fed to the kings of Seuss. Somebody on Seuss knows who he is. Maybe they're the rebellion force? We don't know. Vis returns to the academy. Calidus and Aiden are now friends, and Vis is like, hey, can you 2 work with each other on the labyrinth and tutoring? Because I need to do the labyrinth with Amisa, because she and everybody in class 3 are so much better than me. I need to get up there. And they're like, sure, bro, whatever. Vis sees Calidus sneak out at night and follows him, and Calidus finally tells him what's up with Belly. His dad had set up a studying group before the 18-month academy started, kind of like they just did. It was going to be of people of all different pyramids. Calidus formed a crush on Belly there, and while that was happening, Calidus found out about all the mysterious deaths that were at the academy, and he tells Belly about it. Belly doesn't believe him, so he steals his dad's papers that talking about the deaths, and he shows them to Belly, and Belly fucking steals them. If he does not drop down to class 7, she is going to show everyone these papers. That is the real reason why Calidus is down in class 7 instead of just like in class 5 or something like that. Vis and Calidus start forming a plan to take Belly down. Vis gets Amisa in on the plan, and the 2 of them go to where they take meals. They take the class 3 foundation board and they start playing a game. And Belly's like, dude, we wanted to play. Starts watching the game, and Vis is purposely trying to lose, even though we saw early in the book this is actually fantastic at Foundation. Belly says she's the best at Foundation and has pinned her entire stay at the academy at being the best at Foundation. She's so smart, blah, blah, blah. But Vis knows Belly just plays like a textbook. She isn't actually creative. She doesn't think outside the box at all. And he has been trained to do that. Belly comes over and starts insulting his play just like they knew she would, because she does this every single fucking time she watches somebody else play. And Vis is like, oh yeah, you think you're so good? You should play me. 2 Praeceptors came over, which is already what they wanted. They wanted some Praeceptors to witness this. Vis says, if you win, I will defect to governance instead of military. If I win, I'm gonna take your spot in class 3. And she's like, deal. And the Praeceptors are there, so that means it's valid. She's like, you know what? I'm so good, I'm going to let you remove a piece from the board so that we can be on even ground. And Vis knows for a fact, if he were to remove a piece from her side, she could just say, oh, well, that wasn't a fair round, and the bet wouldn't actually be on. So he removes a piece from his own side. They start playing, and quickly he catches up, and she sees before anybody else that he is going to beat her. And so he whispers to her, hey, if you go and get the papers, that you stole from Calidus, we'll call it a tie. And she's like, deal. She runs and gets the papers and hands them to Calidus. And they start back at the game, and Vis starts crushing her, and everyone sees that she's losing, and she's like freaking out. Like, why are you doing this? And he says, that is what you get for breaking other people's trust. She's like, well, I'll just tell everyone about the papers. And he's like, too bad. Calidus shows up with ashes. She's like, fuck, they burned the papers. He's like, nobody will ever believe you that the papers actually existed. And if they do believe you, they're never going to admit to it. So she's fucked. However, the papers were not actually burned. This was part of the plan. Calidus just showed up with other ashes. He beats her, and Belly is now in class 4. And Vis has moved up to class 3. So he is now one of the 4 plot-relevant class 3s. There are 2 non-plot relevant class 3s that we do not care about. He sees that these 2 people have plateaued in the labyrinth. He probably, with enough time, will be able to outpace them. However, to everybody's surprise, they announce the preparations for the Eutychium are starting now, when it was not supposed to start for weeks. That means that the positions have frozen, and Vis is at the bottom of class 3 going into the Eutychium. The competition of the Eutychium changes every single year, but each class 3, from rank up to down, is going to be able to choose 2 people from the school to be on their team. Indal is going to get first pick, and Vis is going to get last pick. And most people would literally just pick from the class 4s. And Vis is wondering if anybody is going to actually pick Iqua with the whole Vis testing thing. She has been demoted to the bottom of class 4, and he wonders if anyone's going to pick Belly, because Belly has not been doing well. She is not performing well. She looks bad. He goes to Calidus, and Iden is like, hey, will you join me? Iden says yes immediately. Calidus is like, dude, I literally just told you that people are dying. Do not join the Eutychium, and Vis is gonna do it anyway. Calidus says he'll think about it. He ends up showing Vis the papers that he got back from Belly of those students dying. Calidus is like, I'll join you. I just wanted to make sure you know how much of a risk I'm taking for you. Vis goes to Viridius's office to tell him who his partners will be for the Eutychium, and Viridius asks why he picks them. And Vis is like, they're my friends, I actually trust them. And Viridius says that that is exactly who you should be picking for the Eutychium. He also says that he will be telling them and all the other students who are chosen as helpers more information about the Eutychium, and they will be expelled if they give him any extra information going in. Vis has still been training on the labyrinth, and Viridius asks why that is when the rankings have been locked in, and Vis gives some sort of half-hearted excuse. Iden takes him aside later. He asks Vis if he's heard of the right to death in his language. It is a code that his people lived by. They see death as a worthy sacrifice, that living past your time is disgraceful. He says that the hierarchy value life, but they do not respect it like his people do. The Catenans attacked his people without warning or chance for negotiation. The people fended him off, but several were kidnapped, including Iden. Most people took the honorable path and killed themselves instead of letting themselves be taken, but Iden's father did not. He took a deal from the hierarchy. By defecting over to the hierarchy, he would be made a Quintus and in charge of Iden's family's area, and Iden would be in the Sapper for a year. And Vis is like, your dad sent you to the Sapper? And Iden's like, he actually talked down my sentence. I killed 3 Praetorians, dude. Iden says he cannot join Vis in the Eutychium, that if he were, that Vis would not be able to trust him. That means that since Viridius has told Iden and Calidus what is up, the information there has changed Iden's mind, that he thinks he could not be a trustworthy friend to Vis because of this. What the fuck do they know? Vis respects this, and he is going to ask Iqua, because Iqua actually apologized to Vis after the testing thing happened and it didn't work. The teams assemble for the beginning of the Eutychium. Iro was the one who picked Belly. The other 2 class 3s are named Pram and Sionis. We're really not going to talk about them, but it's whatever. Viridius says that this year's competition isn't just about will, it's about leadership. Those who can inspire loyalty will be the ones to succeed. There is a statue of Jovan, and the heart of it, which is a pyramid, has been removed. It is going to be hidden somewhere on the island, and the winner is going to be the person who can replace the heart to the statue. If a class 3 returns the heart to the statue, they will be named Domitor, the winner, literally vanquisher in Latin, and they will be at the top of class 3. Their teammates will also be placed at the top of their respective class. However, they could also replace the heart for themselves. The class 3s are shocked, the class 4s and Calidus are not. I am just going to call them the class 4s from now on, even though I know Calidus is not class 4. Iqua and Calidus are apologetic for what is going on, that they couldn't tell him anything, and Vis is like, dude, I know, whatever. But he is really weary of Iqua. He believes that she's going to defect from him at some point. They are given supplies enough for 3 days, which is how long the Eutychium is going to be, and each class 3 gets a white stone medallion put on a necklace. This is going to be their life, and they cannot put the heart back in the statue without having a medallion. It is unsaid that stealing other people's medallions and breaking them are on the board. They have stones on the medallion, and one of those stones is going to track the heart, and the other ones are going to track the class 3s that are below them in the ranking. That means Indal is going to be able to see all 5 of the other class 3s and the heart, and this is only going to be able to see the heart. They are also going to be given a black bead to swallow called a tracker. These will allow 2 sexty, not class 6s, sexty, to track them as safety teams during the thing because they don't want any more deaths to happen during the Eutychium. In order to get the safety teams to them, they are going to have to either leave their medallion behind and walk away from it so the medallion and the tracker get separated, or they are going to have to smash the medallion. This reasons the medallions could be used as decoys because the students can't see where the trackers are. The class 4s are given their own medallions, which when placed in proximity with a class 3 medallion will link them to that team. If a 3rd wins, those linked to them will be winning. If a 4th wants to replace the heart themselves, their medallion will need to be linked to a class 3's in order to replace the heart. This reasons that means that any class 4 could literally just steal the medallion of a class 3. If a 3rd is not the one to replace the heart, the rankings will be in order of elimination, and if nobody else is eliminated, it is going to be based on the current standing, which means that Indal doesn't actually need to win the Eutychium in order to be first place and get to choose where he wants to go. The outer boundaries of the competition are going to be the 2 rivers of the island and 3 miles outside of the academy, meaning that the red ruins are outside of the playing grounds of the Eutychium. They are going to have until sunset on the 3rd day to replace the heart. Viridius is very careful to make sure each of them swallow their beads, and Vis actually swallows some bread before he swallows his bead. Vis wants to try to stay out of the game for the first day or so, but his real goal is going to be getting back to the red ruins and running the labyrinth. Viridius tells them that they shouldn't take the Eutychium so seriously as to risk their lives. They set off. Vis needs to get the tracker out of him. He realized if the tracker was out of his body, they could just keep the medallion and the tracker together away from him and trick everyone into thinking that's where he is. So he ends up throwing up his bead, which he was able to do because he swallowed that bread, and he puts the bead in his cloak. And the other 2 know about this. Vis asks if they notice the stone discs that were given to the sexty safety teams. Vis is hit from behind and he passes out. Vis, Iqua, and Calidus wake up bound to trees, and Belly and Iro have taken them hostage. Vis knows that they need something from him if they haven't just fucking smashed his medallion already, and he's like, let's team up, and they're like, fuck no, we hate you. Iqua immediately gives in to go to the other team. Iro and Belly want to smash Vis's medallion, but like Iqua's like, hey, it's actually to our benefit to make other people think that we are a bigger team, so let's just take the medallion and keep it intact. She also says, hey, it's really cold out, we should take their cloaks. So Vis knows that Iqua is using his trick of keeping the bead and the medallion together, but he doesn't know if Iqua is on their side anymore. Calidus thinks she is, Vis does not. The 2 of them are talking, and Calidus says what he was offered from Viridius is that he would be given the position of Domitor if he won. And if he was on the winning team, he would be given top of class 4 instead of class 7. Iqua ends up showing up. Vis is surprised that she is back on their team, and she's like, yeah, I know. My plan would not have worked if you had trusted me. So now you have reason to trust me. Let's get going. So Ikwa has left Vis's medallion with Iroh, and she has also fed Vis's bead to Iroh. She is going to go back to them, and she is going to take the medallion away so that Iroh's team can be like, oh, we're pretending that Vis's team is out there. But really what is going to happen is when the bead that is Vis's inside of Iroh and the medallion gets separated, Iroh and his team are going to be eliminated. They're like, that's a great plan. Because we do not have the information that everybody else has, we are going to attack the fucking safety team and get their stone circle that has the tracking information on it. It is going to have the trackers and the medallions on there. And it has been established that you do not need the tracker bead to win the Udakium, you only need the medallion. Ikwa is going to go back to do her plan, and while that happens, Calidus is going to distract the safety team whilst Vis ends up stealing the stone circle, and they are going to split up and meet back up at noon on the second day. And if they aren't there at the same time, he tells Ikwa to fucking go for the win. And while Vis and Calidus are separated, he is going to try to run the labyrinth. Calidus and Vis find a safety team at night. They overhear the sexty mention that A, nothing will matter until tomorrow night. The Udakium has an extra day, what do you mean? And their blood was taken as well, the sexty. Calidus starts singing this bawdy song, and Vis steals both the circle and a cloak from them, and the safety teams fucking run after Vis, and one of them throws a tree at him. Safety team my ass. What's going on? He ends up successfully hiding. He can't figure out how the stone circle works, so he is just going to book it for the ruins. He crosses a river and dries himself off with the cloak that he stole, and he sees that there is blood all over himself because there was blood all over the cloak. What the fuck? He washes himself in the cloak off. And Alupai runs up to him and tackles him and then stops. This Alupai has a scar on his face, right where Diago, the little pup, had a scar. So this thing has grown up really, really quickly, if that is indeed Diago, and he thinks it was, and that he must have tracked him a really far way for him to have met up with him. They part ways, and he gets to the ruins. He goes down to the labyrinth area, and the same woman who was the guide last time was there. He asks if there's some way for him to see the labyrinth from above, and from the ground pops up this like 5x10 version of the labyrinth, like an inch off the ground. She says that when movement is in the labyrinth, you'll be able to see it on the map. This asks the woman if she is alive, and he is sickened with what he has to do, but he lets her go run the labyrinth, and he gets her pretty far. He has to do this test multiple times until the person who shows up is a young girl, and he's like, I can't do this anymore. He thinks he's gotten all the information he needs. So he has figured out that the remnants, they start in the exact same place every time, and they always use the shortest path to get to the person. This is not like a game of bluff. This is logic. This has run enough simulations on the version of the labyrinth that he figures out a path that he thinks he can run. So he goes for it. He is running as fast as he can. He's doing it perfectly. And suddenly he comes across a turn and he finds Belly stuck to a wall. Half of her torso is missing and blood is still dripping. He is frozen. He is like, what could I possibly do to help her? And realizes, shit, I have stopped. I have lost track of where the remnants are, and he has to keep running. Belly's body flickers once, so like it goes translucent for a second. He ends up just narrowly missing being clipped by a remnant when he escapes the labyrinth. He comes out to the other side, the remnants stop, and the entire labyrinth is lowered into the floor again, and this red light overcomes the room. A tunnel opens in the far wall. There's writing on the floor that matches the alphabet that he was seeing in the green ruins. Vis is wondering how Belly's body is pinned to the wall when he has seen 4 separate occasions of people being blenderized. That leads me to wonder, is Belly's body even real? So what we're gonna do, instead of having an X for death, I'm actually going to put a question mark here. Is she actually dead? He thinks that Viridius must have sent Belly to the Red Ruins to run the labyrinth. He ends up going through the tunnel and the light warps and everything is like a funhouse mirror. He goes into this room. You can't even see the ceiling. It's all red. There are these curved bronze blades that form a circle in the middle of the room. Around it, there is in Vertusian something that he has to translate. So every time I do this, that is a word that he does not know if that's the exact translation. He's trying his best. Herein lies the way to Obitium and Lucaeum, offer to all those who would contest our extinction. Know that none who accept this task may remain. The burden of togetherness or harmony, maybe synchronism, is reserved for the one who seals the authors of the war from this world. Only he may exceed the hobbled capabilities of this duplication. He and he alone may risk harmony to make the great sacrifice. He finds more words on the wall that he can't even begin to try to translate, and he is afraid that he has not gotten enough information to satisfy all key score. Nothing's happening, so he just ends up stepping into the circle, and suddenly it feels like the air around him has frozen and he cannot move. The blade starts to rise up out of the ground and move, spinning in a circle to form a cage around him. The blades burst with red lines like blood all over them. He is being crushed until that pressure releases and he feels like he's being torn apart. He tries to drag himself out of the circle, but he passes out before he can do that. He wakes up in the same spot, no idea how long it's been, and he sees that these obsidian shards are now circling the blades. And he sees that his tunic is red. He pulls his arm out and he has been cut, and it says, "Wait." There are figures that are surrounding the circle that keep saying, "Complete the journey, warrior." And there are these big, you can make out like feminine and masculine figures, but like they don't really look human, and they all are carrying fucking scary weapons. And he's super confused. Wasn't he supposed to go to Obitium or Lucaeum? He's in the same room. Clearly nothing's happened. The obsidian shards start spinning faster and faster. The figures stumble and then disappear, and new cuts start appearing on his arm. The letter R and then the letter U. And he knows it's gonna start saying run, so he bolts back to the labyrinth. The labyrinth is currently in the ground, so he picks up the bracer and the labyrinth picks back up. And he realizes that because he is like within the bubble, he can move the labyrinth, so he makes a straight path through the middle of the labyrinth, and all he has to do is outrun the remnants who are already slower than a person running at top speed. So he just fucking bolts through, and he ends up going back up through the exit of the Red Ruins, says Skintrus Exinus to open the doors, and those figures show up again. He is going to have to try to fight them off. Diago ends up coming in and starting attacking them, leaving a hole for him to run out. This says Skintrus Exinus again to close the door, and Diago and a couple of the figures end up coming out. Diago has to fend off several of these guys in order for Vis to be able to get away in some way. He was also bitten by one of these guys, and like a tear has been taken out of his shoulder. Vis tries to attack one of them. The only thing that seems to work is snapping their necks. Diago is whining and in pain, and Vis doesn't think that Diago will make it through the night. He passes out. He wakes back up, and Diago is just breathing over him. He's injured, but fine. And he ends up walking away. And Vis is convinced that somebody helped him out and let him out alive, but he has no idea who it could possibly be. How was somebody drawing on his arms? He now thinks he has enough information for all key score and that he is now in the clear. He just has to survive the Eutychium now. He meets back up with Calidus and Equa. He blames his injury on an alupi. He managed to cover up the writing on his lower arms so nobody saw it. Calidus figures out how to read the circle. The closest team is miles away, and most of the teams have circled around where the heart should be, like in the middle of the island. They see that another third has been eliminated. Iroh has been eliminated. One of the other people has been eliminated. They're assuming that it's one of the not plot relevant people. I'll just call them the NPCs from now on. Vis mentions the way that the Sexti were acting, and the two of them don't think it's suspicious. Equa thinks that Vis's arm is infected. They decide to go to Indal's team, closer to the heart. On the circle, one half of one of the third stones falls off, and the rest of it that's on there starts spinning, and Calidus thinks that that means that a third has been eliminated, but not collected by the safety teams yet. Indal, previously, very quickly into the game, had gotten 4 teammates, and now the other person who is still in the game, that means there is Vis, Indal and one other person. They are hoping it's Amisa. That other person now also has 4 people, presumably from the person who just got eliminated. They got those people. The group of them want to split up as if they are going for the heart. And they can't decide who is going to go with this, Iqua or Calidus. And Iqua flips a fucking coin. Girl, Vis knows what you're up to, we know what you're up to. And Iqua ends up flipping to stick with Vis. Calidus asks them to take care, thinking of the deaths that have happened, and Vis actually isn't worried anymore because he believes all of the deaths that have happened at the Eutychium were due to the labyrinth in the Red Ruins. Colonel Mustard with the rope in the Red Ruins. Vis and Iqua come across a ruins of about a 100-year-old town with a couple of towers. And they are coming up on where the tracker says that the person who was eliminated is. And they can't find them. It appears that they've just passed this person. They didn't see him. And they find a bush that appears to be buzzing. And they go up to it and they find about a dozen dead bodies lying in a grave. It is a ton of the people who are on the safety teams, as well as Sionis, who is one of the NPCs. All of their heads have been exploded, and Iqua points out that this was done with will. This needs to warn the others, and they're worried about Calidus, who has been split off, but they think that Calidus actually might be the safest of them. Vis wonders if this is Relokia's doing. Iqua thinks this is the Anguis, so they're aligned about this. And Iqua realizes that religion would be blamed if anything happened at the Eutychium, and that military would be able to get more power to work at the academy if this were to happen. This reveals to Iqua Indal's plan to defect to religion. This gives his tracker to Iqua and asks her to go after the other team. This calls out to Indal, and Indal's like, bro, I'm not helping you. Until this shows him the bloody cloak, and he pulls out a severed hand that he had gotten from the body pile. Indal immediately snaps out of it and is like, okay, dude, I believe you. He tells him that Sionis is dead, that Iqua and Calidus have split up. Indal is distressed because he was actually the one to eliminate Sionis, and he left him behind for the safety teams, and he blames himself. Indal tells Vis that it is indeed Amisa who is still in play. So these are the 3 teams that are left in the Eutychium. Vis advises that everybody needs to split up and get back to the academy as fast as possible so they can't eliminate them all at once. But before they leave, Vis tells Indal to not trust his father, the Domitius, because of what he overheard at the military summit. He doesn't say exactly what it is, but he says that military is working with the Anguis. He then references Indal wanting to defect to religion, and Indal's like, how the fuck do you know that? Amisa told him, and Indal says, I didn't tell Amisa. How the fuck does Amisa know that? Indal gives Vis his medallion that has the tracking for Amisa on it. Vis finds Iqua and a fellow 4th. Amisa apparently did the same thing of throwing up, just like Vis did, and Amisa left about 15 minutes ago to go try to find the heart. They'll have to go get her and also get Calidus to try to get out of there alive. Vis tells Iqua to get Calidus to smash Vis's medallion. Also, the whole time, since Vis left the Red Ruins, he has felt this presence occasionally. He believes something is following him. And this little spidey sense that he has is pinging like nothing. So Vis tells them to hide, and safety teams pass him. And Vis is very troubled at whatever this spidey sense is, because clearly it was not there before. The Sexti have figured out that the players know something is happening, and they say that they need to get as many of them as they can. Iqua leaves to go find Calidus, and Vis goes to find Amisa. Vis sneaks into this town, and he finds 3/4 pinned spread eagles to the wall by stone spikes, killed in a similar way as the safety teams. A man approaches, and it is the man who met up with Relokia before, saying Vis must know who he is, and Vis is like, dude, I don't know who the fuck you are. The man says that they do have one thing in common, and taps his heart 3 times with 3 fingers. The man says that they are doing all this on behalf of military, who want to solidify the threat of the Anguis in order to put forth new laws that will give them more power and give military control over the academy, just like Iqua thought. Military, or maybe the Senate, it was unclear from what he said, know that Soul of August is special. However, they don't actually know why Soul of August is special, so they don't know about the ruins yet. This man says that even if somebody else gets the island, Viridius is going to bury the gate before anyone can get there. The man vanishes and then appears behind Vis with a knife to his throat. The safety teams apparently knew not to kill Vis, and he goads Vis into going for the heart and claiming victory. He calls Vis kin. He is eager to see what Vis can do. Vis sees that they are killing everyone else to make sure that Vis becomes Domitor. Vis says he's not going to do what Relukia says, and this guy's like, you think Relukia is in charge? She was just following orders. So now Vis is fucking confused. The man says that he has to go for the heart because Amisa is up there. The man vanishes, and Vis climbs up to the tower only to find a strange, huge man holding the heart on the battlement of this tower. There's no sign of Amisa, and the pings are coming from inside like a pile of rubble, so he hopes that she's just hiding there. The man's eyes fill black with will, and he jumps on Vis. He says, Melior will be watching this with great pride. And Vis is like, Melior's fucking dead. What are you talking about? Which now makes me want to do this. Is he actually dead? Maybe he was just saying that in like a, the dead are watching us sort of way. The man throws a huge stone at Vis, and Vis catches it with his bad arm, and he stumbles like off of the tower and catches himself. The man goes up to stomp on his hands when he gets a weird expression on his face. The physical sensation, the spidey sense that Vis had that man was there disappears because this man has just died, and he falls off the tower, and Vis sees something dark leave the back of this man's head. What? Amisa was the one who killed him and had stabbed him with an obsidian blade that she had, and her eyes are all black with will, which is not allowed. He gets back up in the tower, and she is stunned that this man just tried to kill Vis. She did not know about this at all. Vis tells her the situation, and she is happy to see him, but when she looks at his arm, she inspects it, and she backs away, holds up her knife, and is like, dude, you need to give me the heart now because I need to win. And Vis is super surprised and is like, why do you care about that right now? People are dying. She says something about needing them to be together. If I can find the quote, I'll put it up here. Her eyes go black again. He gives it to her immediately and was like, I was gonna give it to you anyway. What are you doing? And she starts crying and throws the dagger at him, pushing it with will, and it pushes him off the tower. Then somehow Vis is trying to reach and grab something, and the heart whips into his hand. How? Don't know. He falls off the tower and he wakes up and he is being pulled out of the river. He can barely move his bad arm. Diago is there and he has pulled Vis out of the river. Vis inspects his stomach where Amisa's dagger went in, and he only feels like a little bit of pain. Is this shock that he's not feeling pain, or did something more happen at the Red Ruins? He can't figure out how the heart got drawn to him, and thinks all of these things that have happened to him since going into the Red Ruins are so weird that something is up. And he is super sad that his girlfriend just tried to kill him, even if he knew that they had an expiration date. Beforehand, I forgot to mention, he had been really sad because he knew that there was an expiration date on their relationship, because no matter where he got sent, he wouldn't be able to be with her. And she does not know this. She wanted to make sure they would stick together afterward. He finds the stone that shows where Calidus is, and he finds him. There is a safety team person with their neck ripped out, and Calidus is cut all over and bleeding out. Calidus wakes up and he says that an Alupite did this. Vis, although he can't even use one of his arms, starts carrying Calidus back to the academy. Calidus asks Vis to tell his father why he was in class 7. Calidus dies en route in Vis's arms. Vis realizes that it is his actual 18th birthday. Okay, a couple things about the 18th birthday. Vis has lied about when his birthday is. He says he's maybe 9 months younger than he actually is, because when you get 18, you get sent to the Aurora Columni for realsies. And before, when Alkiscor was like, I'm super mad at you, he was threatening Vis that if he didn't do stuff, he was saying, I can send you to the Sapper if you do not win the Eutychium and do all these things that I wanted you to do. And Vis has realized that today is his actual 18th birthday. Vis is limping with Calidus's body back to the academy, and he realizes that it is almost sunset, so him bringing back the heart that he still has was almost fucking pointless because he almost missed the time. He gets up to where the statue is at the academy, and Viridius is giving a speech. He is surrounded by the remaining third years. He lays Calidus's body at Viridius's feet and says to Emisa and Viridius, "I'm going to make sure you burn for this." He collapses and passes out. Take another shot. Vis can tell he is bound to a bed in the infirmary. He keeps like waking up a little bit and seeing things. He sees his father sitting next to his bed and crying, which is disturbing because Vis has only seen his father cry one time. His father comes over to him, holds him, and Vis can even feel it. And Vis says, "You're dead," and his father says yes. Vis cries in grief. He is so alone, and his father says he is so proud of him that he can't give up and to remember who he is. And Vis is in despair that there is no point of keeping on since the hierarchy has taken everything away from him. He feels like he cannot be himself, like he cannot be his father's son under these conditions. And he is also despairing at the death of Calidus. And his father says, quote, "Death is a doorway. You will see him again. No one is ever truly lost." He then says that he's so glad to see this, even if it is so short and for the very last time. Which, what? Vis wakes up and Viridius is there. Viridius says that Vis's blood is tainted and that they need to be honest with each other fucking quickly because people are coming. "Did you run the labyrinth?" "Yes." "Was anyone else there?" "Belly, she's dead." How did he know it was there? Alkiskor told him. And Viridius is super frustrated that Alkiskor can't fucking trust him anymore. He's so mad. Viridius says that the council is here and that Vis needs to trust him. Viridius needs Vis to join religion. That it is not about politics, it is about stopping the next cataclysm. He also asks Viridius if he is a prisoner because he has been bound to the bed, and Viridius says, "No. We had to hold you down." And Vis notices for the first time that his bad arm is now missing. Aiden comes in and he says that the council is there. Viridius leaves, Aiden and them talk, and Vis is despairing because he thinks that Calidus's death was pointless. And Aiden says, "Death is only meaningless if it doesn't change you," and that the two of them will celebrate Calidus's life later. A Magnus Cordis and a few others come in. They are demanding that Vis choose his placement immediately because he's been passed out for like 5 days and they need to sign the paperwork. If he does not choose, he will be sent into military service. He is tempted by that outer post that he wanted to do, especially because he definitely has enough information for Alkiskor. He can now kind of do whatever he wants. He could do religion to go along with Viridius, but he blurts out that he wants to work for the censor. He wants to work for Calidus's dad, who was the only person in the hierarchy who was up in the hierarchy that he felt like he could trust was Calidus. And they are like, "That's unusual," but they sign off of it and everybody leaves and Viridius is like, "What the fuck? Why did you do that?" This takes him to task, and he says that these kids were under your protection and you raised them like lambs to the slaughter to run the labyrinth. Viridius's charming demeanor that he has had the entire book slips for the very first time and he is stony-faced. Viridius leaves, and Vis notices that on his bedside table is a small carved boat. He opens it, and inside it says Diago. What the fuck? And now we have to put another question mark on here. Is his dad dead? His dad said he was dead, but what's happening? Naming the dog Diago makes me tear up, Calidus's death makes me tear up, and finding the Diago boat makes me tear up. And then we get to, it's not called Act 4 or Epilogue, it is called Synchronism. And the title of it is Ex Uno Plures, which is the opposite of a phrase you might have heard, E pluribus unum, which is from many one. It is also the motto of the United States of America. So this instead means from one many. Tear 3 from 1. Vis wakes up in the Blade Circle in that red room in the Red Ruins. He picks himself up and the words start writing themselves on his arms. He does the waiting and running. He goes back to the labyrinth, but there is no bracer. On the wall, there's a Vertusian message that was not there before. It says, "Sealed against the tools of the enemy after the rending. The passage to Lycaeum requires a toll to ensure validity." There's 2 circles, a foot in diameter at about chest height, and so Vis just naturally puts his hands on there, and he collapses in pain. When he tries to hold himself, he feels that one of his arms ends in a stump. He had 2 hands, and now he has 1. A group of people run up to him saying that, quote, "The other from your world will be coming." He can see that there's snow outside and that they're high up. Vis wakes up in the Blade Circle in the Red Room in the Red Ruins. A dark-skinned man with scar tissue on his face says that he's there to help and welcomes him to Obitium, asking if Viridius sent him. And Vis is like, "No, but I know who he is." This man introduces himself as Siror. So now, officially, all of our deaths have turned into question marks. Siror says, "We have to save you back in Res. That you have been copied just like the world was in the war against the Concurrents." He says, "You're currently still connected to your other bodies, and that'll fade, so we need to act fast." He asks Vis to roll up his sleeves. And that is the end of The Will of the Many by James Islington. Really quickly before I go, here are some questions we still have at the end of book 1. What is the Cataclysm, and is it the same thing as the Rending? I kind of think it is. What is the Concurrence? Why is Vis copied when others seem not to have when they are going through this door? I think it's because of the Aurora Columni. Probably. Is Belly actually dead? Her body flickered. Is his dad actually dead? Why did Amisa shoot Vis? And what does she know? Because as soon as she saw his arm, she switched her demeanor immediately. Of course, what are Obitium and Lycaeum going to be like? What were the extra drawings that were shown to Vis when that fake physician showed up? What was the blood test for? Who knows about the other worlds? How do people who don't go to the Aurora Columni get their scars? And how do they avoid going even though the hierarchy forces everybody? Also, what are the Aurora Columni? Where are they? What is the attack that the Anguis and the military have planned that it has to do with a boat? What is the weapon that Melior/Estevan had? Which world did he see when he touched Estevan? Why does the hierarchy seem to exist on all planes? Because when he was in the Lycaeum room, there was still a symbol of the hierarchy, this pyramid on the wall. Who wrote that shit in the ruins? What are all the dead bodies in the ruins, and how did Lannistia not die? Because clearly she went through the same thing that they did. How much does Viridius know? And was he actually the one sending the kids to die, or were the kids just poached by the same people? And who knows about the potential upcoming cataclysm? That's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I worked really hard on this. It is now dark outside, and I just decided to film this in one go. I'm losing my voice, I'm hungry, and I am hungry for the next book. Please leave a like, comment. You know what, if I missed anything, feel free to comment it. Please be nice, because clearly I try really fucking hard. James Islington, I love your stuff. I would love a copy of the book if you can send me one. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I don't normally do this type of thing, but I probably will do this with the strength of the few. And I'll see you in the next one.